All right.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Gray Zone Uncensored. I'm sorry, there was a little foolish weirdness going on
We're
before we
not
went
live.
live.
I don't
Yeah, we're
show we're
live.
live. Oh, wait, why not?
We live. Yeah, see, big red button up there says we
I
live.
don't see.
See, there's some weirdness going on. See, I was just telling
Okay.
you, there's some weirdness
Now we're
going on
live.
tonight. See,
I know it's
Michelle got
weird.
lagged for some reason. That's because she's up there in Canada, Canadian Day. What was I calling it last night? Canadian Day. I was calling. I was really calling it stupid shit last night. No, people. I was. For anybody else, I was not loaded last night or today. It was just a weird night and a weird day. But anybody who caught the essentials last night, y'all should enjoy. It was a good show. It was news packed, full of stuff. We went over a lot of material in that 2 hour show last night. It was really good. It was the only show we aired on because I gave everybody else Friday off. But we were the only ones on last night. It was Michael, myself, and Jay Nichols, who hosts with Jeffrey Pritchard on the Church of Mavis on Fridays usually. But we had a good show. I see Joseph. He was in there with us last night. He heard us talking last night. Yeah, hey, YouTube does hate me, man. Don't ask, dude. Apparently, I offended someone in the top of YouTube really bad. I don't know how. I love YouTube. I want to hug them and kiss them. Anyway, we're not going to get into that today. But today on the Gray Zone Uncensored segment 36, I can't believe we've already done 36 of these shows. And in the beginning, y'all were only supposed to get one of these a month. So be grateful y'all get this many. We're going to be talking about life after disclosure part one. So this is kind of serious because we've heard all about disclosure and disclosure this and disclosure that and disclosure this. And I've always said, you're never going to get to the truth chasing lights in the sky. Now, a good friend of mine, Stephen Bessett, hates when I say that because he says we're going to find the truth by chasing lights in the sky. I don't believe that. I think the only way to get to the truth is through contactees because I don't think the government's going to ever just walk up and say, well, people of Earth, we have aliens visiting. There's just no motivation for it. I mean, if we could give a motivation, it would be one thing. But at this point, there's just no motivation for the Pentagon or the White House to come out and say that. And, and I've never even heard Uncle Joe even talk about UFOs. I don't want to hate on a man, but I've never heard him even use the word extraterrestrial. So at least Trump, just before Trump left and that last bill, in case y'all didn't know this, the reason why this disclosure stuff is going on right now is because in that last $1 trillion bill Trump let him pass, it was put into the bill that the Pentagon had to disclose everything they knew about extra or UFOs at this point. So I don't think they've actually disclosed all of it, but I think they're getting closer. And there will be one more drop before this is all said and done. I think it's going to probably be another month away, but when it does come out, we will be talking about it. But it is something that they are talking about. And what you got to give the government something. Not money, because they got plenty of money. So what is it that you got to give the government to make them talk? Amnesty would be a good thing. But I'm going to let Michelle bring us in properly because I can turn on to other service so the rest of the world can hear this lovely conversation. I'll be right back. Michelle, it is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. So, as Joe said, welcome to the segment 36 of the Gray Zone Uncensored. We are broadcasting live here via the International Public Radio on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM, 105.3 FM from the beautiful city of New Orleans. Tonight's topic, of course, is disclosure. So, let's get started. Those who waited patiently for the watered-down public version of the Pentagon's UAP-UFO report were left a little perplexed and disappointed. The classified report was said to be 10 times longer and contain much more information. The report, however, was nothing more than the preliminary report, which the House and Senate will review while they are in recess, and they will be back in session October 12th. So again, the waiting game begins. So where do we go from here? Well, it would seem that people are taking matters into their own hands by doing their own research and going public with their own captures and experiences. The truth can't be hidden forever. The people are waking up, and governments better be prepared to start giving out real answers. So, of course, tonight we're digging into a little bit of our own exploration with respect to the world of UFOs and UAPs, and we're going to see if we can try to answer some of those questions that are floating around post disclosure. And believe me, I always find lots of good stuff. So
Yes, she does. Actually, people, she's quite good at finding good stuff.
Thank you.
We're going to cross a lot of details tonight, but it's a little strange today about this. I was talking with a friend of mine earlier today about UFOs and Near Isley, who is an experiencer, contactee, and we got to talking a little earlier today. Just a little quick conversation, but for people who have been contacted, they already feel disclosures happened. So the real problem here is it's not the people who have been contacted. They think disclosures already happened. It's disclosure for the other 6.5 billion that have not heard it or know it. That's where we're talking about disclosure. But the real problem here is what if ET only wants to be disclosed to the people who they're speaking with or dealing with, and they don't really care if the rest of the population knows? Well, that's even less incentive for the government to come forward. So it just makes it hard. And for some reason, the government will chase UFOs all day long, but they rarely want to mess with contactees. Now, the only time they seem to mess with contactees is if somebody comes out and goes into detailed explanations on how ships work or navigation systems work or how interface with the ships work or agendas. Then, for some reason, a military abduction will happen. And it's not really military, but it is an abduction through the government. That'll happen because they're searching for answers. Remember, we don't know if Uncle Sam knows any more than we do. And I'm going to be honest with you. I got 3 friends, actually 5 friends that are high up in different places in the government. I got 4 or 5 friends in the military. And frankly, they tell me all the time I know more than they do. That's just scary is what that is. Not that I don't know a lot, but come on, I should not know more than they do in any shape, form, or fashion. Granted, we are a worldwide organization with 65,000 cases, but that doesn't mean we should know more than the government knows. I think when it comes to technologies, the government has a pretty good hand on what's going on. As far as agendas and stuff like that, maybe not. They might not. It might not be privy to them. But we do know on at least 3 occasions presidents met with ET. We know on the USS Nimitz when I was stationed on board, Reagan met with him. We know Eisenhower met with him in Oregon, and we know I'll forget the other one met in Seattle. Truman. So here you've got 3 different presidents that supposedly have met with extraterrestrials for whatever reason. Now, after these 3 meetings, I haven't seen anything major change except for Reagan. In Reagan's case, he went a little wacky on us. He instituted Pine Gap, the Joint British Defense of Outer Space. Well, okay, I don't know where we're defending from, but here he goes. Then what's the next thing he does? He opens the HARP facility, which is still up there punching holes in the ionosphere over Canada. Probably why it's so damn hot up there now. And then he instituted Star Wars. Now, we all thought Star Wars, oh yeah, it's going to keep the Russians from killing us or the Chinese or whoever. But come to find out, these lasers that they were building were far more advanced than anything you needed to shoot down a spaceship. To shoot down a missile. These were more like lasers. These things were massive. They could shoot down like a city or a big craft of some kind. They weren't really designed. Somebody said they made them that big so they could sweep and take out multiple warheads at a time. Maybe so. I don't know. I'm only privy to X amount of information about Star Wars, and that's just because I got a friend of mine who used to work at, I was going to say Pine Gap at Los Alamos, and they were way up in Los Alamos. Matter of fact, that's how I found out that a certain ufologist who said he worked at Area 51 was actually a janitor at Los Alamos. At least that's what his records say. Yes. His records say that he was a janitor at Los Alamos. Yes, it's going to be a weird night. Just when I logged into YouTube, it said, we may be experiencing difficulty in slow things today. So if y'all having problems with YouTube, it's not us. It's not us. It's them. Me too. So it's just, and there's a lot of people on the internet right now. Everybody's off this weekend. It's Canada Day a couple of days ago. It's Independence Day for us tomorrow. You've got all these people packed in doing whatever they're doing. And, here's another weird one. So New Orleans are going to have Essence Fest, right? So wait, instead of a real Essence Fest, because everybody came down for Essence Fest, they're going to have virtual Essence Fest. I'm not even sure what the hell virtual Essence Fest could do, because everybody's coming down to drink and have fun. I'm not even sure what the hell a virtual Essence Fest is. But hey, and then, like for 4th of July, New Orleans cut back on all those things, and Will Smith came in and donated a bunch of money. He said, no, y'all need to have a fireworks show. So I don't even know if that's going to happen. Now, here on the Gulf Coast, it's different. Mississippi's a whole different beast. They really get into their country pride. We Americans just kill you, stuff like that. You gotta watch them. Well, a good friend of mine. On a side note, a good friend of mine watched the new Red Dawn the other day, and he's like, "Could this happen?" I said, "Yeah, it could happen." I said they could do that in blocks in the country, but the problem is, just like the guy said in Red Dawn. So one day there's 1.3 billion Chinese, the next day there's 500 million, the next day there's 200 million, because we're just going to nuke the crap out of them. We're not going to let somebody get on a sovereign soil and just say, hey, isn't this just not going to happen? And then you've got to deal with rednecks like me armed to the teeth. We were talking about this last night. The 3 of us last night, all 3 of us are armed to the teeth. So, and we know our areas really well. We know the swamps really well. You ain't going to just get us out of there. We're going to kill a lot of you before you get to us. So it's not exactly the best way to go. But getting back to the extraterrestrial thing, and maybe that's why ET's a little leery about putting their feet down here too much. Everybody's got a gun. Chinese, everybody don't have a gun, but they got a spear or a knife. You ever seen Chinese people on TV making food? Man, they're pretty good with them knives. So I'm just saying, we're not the most, how can I say this, the most peaceful people on the planet or in the universe, I would say. We still have a lot of violence in us, a lot of anger in us, and it makes us angry that secrets are being kept from us. So let's just say tomorrow, Uncle Joe comes out and says, "Guess what, humans of Earth, because he's an alien. There's aliens visiting your planet. What's it? Can anybody tell me what the first thing that's going to happen? It's the very first thing that's going to happen. Is it going to be mass panic? Is it going to be parades? No. First thing that's going to happen is every contactee in the planet is going to sue their local government for allowing them to be abducted. You're talking hundreds of trillions of dollars because there's at least 1.5 billion contactees worldwide. So it's a lot of money you're talking about here. And they're just not going to just roll over and say no. And then they're going to want to be heard because they are contactees. And I'm not saying that everybody who says they've been abducted has been. A lot of them are liars. I'm not going to deny that. But still, all the ones that have been that are legit, like I said last time, the day after disclosure, I have a paid job. Oh, yes, I have a good paid job, too. Probably 7 or 8 figures. Because, they're going to need people like us who actually know what the hell's going on. But then on the other hand, you're still going to have mass panic in places like South America, Africa, the Middle East. The Middle East is going to be one big fur ball of panic. Even though parts of the Middle East really do believe in extraterrestrials, a lot of them don't. Same thing in South America. A lot of people believe in extraterrestrials. A lot of them don't. And a good Christian friend of mine, good Catholic friend of mine, says, "Oh, no, if God didn't talk about it, they're the demons." Already we're into the demons. We haven't even got going to the government or what's going on, and we're already calling the ETs demons. Just not the good way to go. I mean, they haven't even made contact with us yet. We're calling demons. I know several groups that do exorcisms on contactees to get the demon out of them. And it never works, of course, because it's not a demon. So these are things we can look forward to after disclosure. Now, what also will happen is there will be people like myself and others that really have key information that we don't talk about. Because I'll be honest with you, I was doing an interview the other day, and a lady asked me, "Well, can't you talk about this, this, and this?" I said, "No." I said, half of our abduction criteria we keep top secret. And the reason why is I would never know who was telling. If I put all of that out, I would never be able to distinguish between the liars and who's telling the truth. That's why we keep it. Matter of fact, when I started putting it out, I lost 7 directors in 1 month. They got mad and quit. They said, "Joe, you shouldn't release any of it." When I talked about certain other things that I released, I lost another 5 because they did not think I should be putting this information into the general public. And it did make it harder. It didn't make it super harder, but it did make it harder because people instantly started using this. When I released the blood type thing, I lost 11 state directors and 21 investigators in 1 week because they said I should not make the blood type information. It should be kept top secret and nobody should use it because other people are just going to jump on our research and use it. And they were right. A bunch of other people used it without giving us credit. We released the first blood type study 12 years ago. Then we released the second time again on an episode of Ancient Aliens. I think it was called Return. 2 years later, I did another episode of Ancient Aliens to talk about who was on there talking about it. Linda Moulton Howe, like it was her research. They were right. And it's not just her. There were several other researchers that used this as their own information. And then there were several researchers that tried to drew the figures around to fit their own blood types. I was like, what the hell's wrong with you people? It's just data. It's what it is. Take it for what it is. It's data. It doesn't mean because you got O positive or this, that, or other that you're not useless or you're not useful or you're not being taken. It's just saying that this particular group, they tend to take more of. It's all it proved. And it gave us an end. People don't understand why ICAR does this. ICAR does a lot of this so that we can find the truth and that we can find contactees. Because remember, 98% of abductees don't know they've been abducted. They're walking around in life with these weird things in their head or this weird stuff going on in their life, but they don't think it's aliens. They don't even know what the hell it is. So when we put this information out along with the 50 questionnaire questions, this helps people just reading to say, oh, wait, I've experienced these 50 things and I have this blood and eye color. Maybe I'm a contactee. So at least they'll seek out help. And if they're not, they go back to their regular lives with no qualms. And if they are, well, then we go from there. But it's a strange beast to know that we're going to have to deal with all of this after disclosure. Anyway, Michelle, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm sassy, but I'm fine.
You are sassy, man, for sure today.
Yes, with me, people. Y'all me. I was hot last night too. Yes,
Honorable.
watch. Y'all better watch out. I kept
On a
sending. I
roll.
was sending Amelia pizza things last night. I said, "No, hi, pizza. How
Oh,
go?" She said
revenge.
spaghetti. I said pizza.
Let the
Y'all don't
games
worry about that.
begin.
It's a personal thing between Amelia and I. Don't worry about it. We like to pick on each other. And a good friend of mine asked me, he's got a dance course to lose weight. He said, "Why don't you come to the course?" And I looked at him. I said, "I'll tell you what." I said, "When they fix this nerve in my face," I said, "I'll come to the course because I like to dance." But and whoever wrote that, no, I'm not even going to answer that. You know what?
Um,
I'm moving y'all over here.
okay, well, before we get started, Joseph wanted me to tell Joe that if he follows the money, he might be able to know, let me see here, have an idea, who knows about, I'm assuming
That's a
all
good
this
point.
in the
No, that's a good
government. Yeah, absolutely.
And so we've used, I'm glad you said that, Joseph. We've used this a couple of times. So we've used other friends in the field that we knew had traces into some of the money and where it was going. And since I've had contacts in the military and I had met Senator McDonald back in the day, we did follow the money and found out several interesting things. One, that a lot of what we were chasing were not aliens, they were ours. The TR-3Bs are ours, they're not extraterrestrials. They're very advanced. Don't know why we haven't seen them. And it's really funny because the very first time we did this, we found the X-117, the stealth fighter, okay? Didn't even know it existed at the time, and we stumbled across it. But the reason why we did is we kept getting these reports of these UFOs, and then I realized something. They were being seen like over Eglin Air Force Base across to the NASA facility in Mississippi. We've seen them in Nevada. We've seen them in Arizona, New Mexico, and California, but they were all over restricted fly places, which only thing that's flying over those is military, because if anything else is flying over, they will shoot your ass down. So, or they will escort you to the nearest airport and make you land. So we knew right then and there that those were not extraterrestrial. Those were ours. And I still remember when I was asked not to talk about the Aurora craft. I got a phone call. This is so crazy. I get a phone call. It's like 1:30 in the morning. And they're like, I'm like, "What is this?" And they say, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's 11 o'clock. This is such and such and such. And I'm with this branch. And we would friendlyly request that you do not talk about the Aurora craft anymore." And the reason this happened is a friend of mine, Joe, we went to the all women's conference in Stevensville. Stevensville is where MUFON said this was an alien craft. They're idiots. So we get up there. We get the witnesses to start telling us. We actually are filming live at the location it happened. Big bonfire going. Everybody's out there who's seen it. All the researchers are out there. And one thing good about Joe Bernard, he films everything. That SOB films everything. Sometimes it ain't a good thing for me, but he films everything, man. So he's filming the whole conversation between us. And everybody's having a few beers and having a good time. And so the witnesses start talking to us. Well, I asked him, I said, "Was there anything else?" He said, "Well, there were chase planes." I'm like, "Whoa, wait, chase planes? I didn't hear anything about chase planes." I said, "Well, wait, chase planes suggest it's ours. Anything that can keep up with UFOs has got to be ours. I mean, because you can't keep up with UFOs." Then he talks about this craft. He said, but he did notice along the nose cone, along the corner of the belly, it had rivets. All right. I have never heard of any alien craft with rivets. Every time I hear about an alien craft, it's a solid piece. It's not any rivets on it. And usually when the doors close on it, it's completely sealed. You can't even tell where they are. So this thing's got rivets, and it's got escort, chase planes. So then, in case y'all didn't know this, there was a squadron of F-16s in the air that night on regular maneuvers, practice maneuvers. So remember, this thing was headed for George Bush's ranch. He was president at the time, and he was at the ranch. So now you've got an extraterrestrial-looking craft headed for the president, and no one scrambled any planes to intercept it. You know why? Because they knew what the hell it was. If they would have known, if they didn't know what it was, they would have instantly reverted that F-16 group because it could have headed off before they ever got to the ranch. And, so long story short, I had a friend of mine that works for the government that actually worked for Boeing out in California. And I used to be good friends with her sister, and she introduced me to her. So I called her. From that night, I got on the phone and called her. I said, "Hey, look, this is blah, 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 blah." I told her about the craft. She said, No, Joe, it's on ours. I said, "Can you send the information?" She said, "Yeah, because your security clearance is high enough. I'll send it to you, but you can't share it." So she sends me the information. I look at it. Obviously, it is not an alien craft. It didn't even take a rocket science to figure this was not an alien craft. This was another one of MUFON's ways of trying, generate income, generate money. So I'm not the only one that debunked this. So a couple of MUFON's directors decided, oh, no, Joe's right. This is not an alien craft. Ooh, they got fired from MUFON, by the way, because MUFON was making money off of this, or taking in money off of this is how I should say it. in the end, this was not an alien craft. Even though today they try to tell you it was an alien craft, it was not. The witnesses description the witnesses give is not an alien craft. And if they change the stories, I have it on tape, the original one, because we keep everything. So they can't even really change this. They can't even recant now because we have it. And because I thought it might have been UFOs, because UFOs like to show up around nuclear power plants. And right outside of Stevensville, there was a dual reactor plant, a power plant with dual reactors. And I thought maybe that's what they were interested in, but they didn't go nowhere near that. Never went by George Bush's ranch. It went out another, I think, 300 or 400 miles, and it made a left and came back. Last I heard, it was headed back to California, where it probably landed outside one of the deserts out there. But it was flying over restricted airspace. Even where we were was restricted airspace because there's a nuclear power plant there. So this thing never got into commercial airspace or any regular airspace. It stayed in restricted airspace. So answer me this. How does an extraterrestrial craft know that it's flying in, well, no-fly zones? And why was no planes diverted to go check it out? Because it was in a no-fly zone. And it was headed for the president. So this thing was in a no-fly zone headed for the president, but yet we still did not divert the F-16s to go see what it was. Why not? Because some general admiral got on the phone and said, don't mess with it, it's ours. So it always comes down to you have to do your research. You have to do it correctly. You have to do it right. You can't look for something that you want it to be a UFO or an alien craft, okay? In the end, you have to do legit research to prove if it's real or if it's not real. And if it turns out to be not real, you still have to tell people it's not. It doesn't matter what your organization is or who you work for. In the end, the truth is all that matters because, I've debunked a lot of cases over the years, which hacks off a lot of people, but we need to know what's real and what's not because that really is what gives us an idea of what they may or may not be doing here. Ooh, that was a mouthful, man. Look at Michelle looking all like, ooh, she's all looking sassy and she got that look like.
I'm just listening. I'm just listening.
I wish I could look sexy.
You're on a roll.
It's anyway. Well, we're gonna actually get to the actual show today. I just want to kind of get all that in there in the beginning so y'all can kind of see where we're going because there will be consequences after disclosure. Whatever they may end up being, there will be consequences after disclosure. Some will be good, some will be bad, and some will just be nutcases running around on our planet, which we've kind of gotten used to over the years. Peace, quiet. There's a lot of weirdness out in the universe today, and there's a lot of weirdness in our country. And there's a lot of people who want us to know the truth, but they really don't know what they're telling us. And just to put it in perspective, I was talking to a gentleman way up in the Navy, and he's like, Joe, he said, really and truly, he said, I know a lot. He said, but you still sound like you know more than I do. I'm like, there's no way. So we sat down one day and compared notes, and guess what? I actually did know more than he did. And he was just amazed that I knew that much. He's like, oh, yeah, he's writing notes and shit. I'm like, oh, my God, I'm disclosing to somebody I shouldn't be telling. But live and learn.
Maybe just trying to figure out what you know.
That's fine. Again, look, I've told them before I'm willing to share. I have no qualms about sharing with our government because I really figure they need to know. I mean, they're supposed to be the fine line between us and whatever's out there, right? I mean, they're supposed to be our protection. So I feel like they should know. But I also feel like they should not use it to try to take advantage of ET because I don't think ET is going to put up with that. And whoever sent me that, no, the Greys do not work for the reptilians and the humans. I debunked that theory a long time ago. It's not hard to debunk because they only showed up in the scene quite a few years after the Greys and reptilians. I mean, the reptilians and humans were here a lot longer than the Greys were. The Greys came on the scene, I guess, for a better way of saying it, to keep them from getting into a war. Yeah, because the humans and reps were getting ready to get into it. Yeah, reptoids like to steal their women and rape them and bring them back. It'd piss off any race. just how it would go. But anyway, we got to get down to what we're doing because I done took up 20 minutes already. I know Michelle got a lot of data here because I'm looking at it earlier. And let's get over here where I can actually see. Yay. Where are we going first?
All right. Well, we're going to get into
She's on better drugs than I am.
Don't I wish? Pretty sure you got me beat on that. The leave gets as good as it gets for me, man. Well, of course, last week we touched on the Ministry of Defense and how they're going to amp things up with new programs or a new program coming up. And finally delve a little bit deeper into these UAPs, UFOs. I came across something I found very interesting also, which was how media was considered a weapon of war, a defense strategy. And it kind of made me wonder, is that what they're doing now, but with the public, as opposed to with, let's say, military? So there are two photos that go with this. An uncovered document shows how the DoD is using media as a key perception management tool. This can be found, more information can be found on the pulse.one, guys. The document also gives insight as to why disclosing information now with respect to UAPs and UFOs. It's somewhat of a campaign to assist in gaining an advantage over the foes or enemies, so to speak. Basically, the media is a weapon of war. The intent is to achieve key objectives, one being targeted the mass minds. This aims to defeat one's adversary psychologically. So, for example, if China or Russia mistakes a recon U.S. plane for a UFO, then the U.S. gains a major advantage over them. But it also targets its own public with propaganda. Spin doctors, always spinning the news. It's the new media war, spinning of information. So if this document is to be believed, it certainly is interesting. So what's the strategy then if they're sitting here throwing all this information out and we're all sitting here wondering what's going on? How much of the whole everything, if this is really a thing, how much is being kept from us far beyond, aerial phenomenon and UFOs? I think it was pretty darn interesting. So if that's the thing, because we're going to show there's a lot of people that do speak out about this. We're going to show examples of how all of this has been a thing. This is basically what the gray zone is about. It's about digging and it's about contradicting, let's say, parts of this said document, because we don't really know what's in the unclassified version. And a lot of people within the field, not just ufology, astronauts, journalists, are speaking out. But let's back up for a moment here to the next topic, which entitled Alien Communication. There's one photo. So did aliens attempt communication with us? In 1974, NASA sent out a message into space, which was a radio signal that essentially told them where our planet was located within our solar system and our people. I was going to say, that really good idea. We know Stephen Hawking was really against that. But it would
not just him,
yeah, right. There's a lot of people that don't like it. I think we covered that on one segment of the disclosure journey. It would appear that the message may have gotten a response. In 2001, which was 21 years later, a crop circle sort of appeared, not really a circle, appeared in London, pretty much next to the same antenna that was used to send the original message. And of course, the government will not confirm the existence of ETs, yet this shows up. I mean, the crop circles show up all over the world, many to which actually cannot be explained. But this one here seems pretty compelling. It's an answer to, this would have been the NASA message. And thinking, looks like it could be something. And there's the antenna, the big antenna at the very back. So I don't know.
It's, crop circles are, which crop triangle here? Crop rectangle here, but it's a weird thing. And I've interviewed a lot of people over the years about crop circles. What's funny about this is, so for 1,000 years, crop circles have been being seen in England. But there have always been circles. They've never been anything else. Right. That's what's weird about this. Not just there, pretty much any place they've showed up in the world, they've always been circles. And most researchers either think it's the chaos theory, which is just bogus, or they think it's like a stop sign or a hello sign. Not for us, though. For them. It's like, say, hey, Bob was here, Keith was here, Billy was here, Bubbles the Gray was here. That's what it's supposed to be. They're not really supposed to be for us. And because think of it this way. If we're going for 1,000 years, there's no way. Before now, we couldn't even see them. Somebody just walk into a field like, oh, it's a big circle. What happened here? They didn't even think about them, or they thought it was some deity or whatever. But they never even thought about extraterrestrials because it wasn't something that was, in their head back then. But there was never any other kind. So a lot of researchers say this is bogus and was made by humans. And then we did find out, unfortunately, especially in America, most of the ones that show up in America were bogus. They were made by humans. which is really just irritating to think somebody waste their time and get out there. And some of the more advanced ones with the pictures and the really pretty ones, almost all of them were made by humans. Now, this one, they go back and forth on. I didn't personally go see it, but there's a couple of things you look for in crop circles. One, the way the wheat is pushed down, but they have expulsion cavities in them. So in every grain in every stalk that's out there, there'll be an expulsion cavity. If there's not, it was not made by a craft of any kind. Also, they find this weird silicone on the ground in different places. If those two things aren't present, then it was not made by any extraterrestrials. It was made by a human. They've actually got that much research now that they can define the differences between them. For me, it's hard because I'm not a crop circle researcher. I can only go by what I've been told over the years. I thought this one was fascinating. Also, the one with the disc with the alien face, I thought was fascinating. But that was immediately proved to be fake. It went around in the ufology for a long time trying to say it wasn't, but the people had come out and claimed it. And still, UFO people were trying to say it was real. Oh, they're lying. No, they weren't lying. There was none of the typical things found in a real crop circle. And this one, I never heard who did the actual research. So I don't know if they found the things that you would normally find inside of a normal crop circle. It came on the scene. A lot of people talked about it, and then it just kind of faded away, which unfortunately happens to a lot of crop circles. They're great, and then they're fun. But just remember, for over 1,000 years, ET never made anything fancy at all. They only made the circles. A lot of people just thought it was a certain type of craft would land, and it would make the circle, or they have these orb things go out there and make the circle, and it was just to let the other aliens know, hey, we were here. That's what a lot of researchers think. And then, of course, there is a group that think it's chaos theory. Well, when you see stuff like this, you can rule chaos theory out. That has nothing to do with that. Chaos theory is not going to produce something like that. So it's hard, people. It could be alien. It could be human. It's 50-50. You could flip a coin. No one's really come up with enough research to prove what they are, which is sad. And it is close to the NASA
this one's
message.
sort of fascinating. Like you say, it's different. It's out of the norm. And it seems to looks a lot like the NASA message. So unless you're pretty much NASA, how would you know to replicate this?
You'd be surprised what geekers can find out. Yeah, you'd be surprised what geekers can find out. There's not many secrets that NASA can keep from me. Matter of fact, a good friend of mine who works for the government now got his ass. That's why he works for the government. He was hacking NASA and giving us information, and and he was getting away with it. For some reason, he decided to go back through the same door to go get something. They got him, and they told him playing out 10 years in prison or 10 years working for us. I mean, he's really good at what he did. He hacked him for like 4 years. He had hacked him for like 4 years and never got caught. So he was working up at the Hart facility. Then he went to the Pentagon for a while. And now he's in Pine Gap. And I keep good track of him because he's the one who gave me this little neat program that I got on all my computers. So what it does is it stores any viruses I've ever got on anything in my computers and it stores them in a file. It leaves a port open on my computer. So when you hack it, you go automatically to that port. As soon as you open that port, everything in there is dumped into your computer. Yeah, it's shot after that. You can throw it in the garbage. You're not going to fix it. We can place the hard drives, but it's just pretty much shot. It'll overheat and do all kind of nasty things to it. So I warn people all the time, stay out of my computer. If you get in there and you get it, don't come whining, because they had a group of hackers on Facebook. They were saying, "Oh, we're getting it." They work for Anonymous, and they were picking on me. I said, "Go ahead. If you think you can hack it, hack it." He said, "Oh, look, I'm in." And then he went bye-bye like 2 minutes later. Never seen him again. I said, "Oh, yeah, you hacked it, all right. You hacked yourself right out of a computer is what you did." I tell people this all the time. There's always someone bigger and badder out there. In the old days when hacking wasn't illegal, I had a lot of fun hacking and cracking. But today it's illegal, so I don't do it. You can $10,000 fine and up to 10 years in jail. So just leave it alone is what I say. But in cases like these, you can get information like this. And NASA originally had made the message available. I think it was a year after, or maybe 8 months after, they had made the message available. I forgot one of the real famous. I think it was Carl Sagan. No, it wasn't Carl Sagan. Who was it? Mm-hmm. It was one of the famous ones. Said, "What the hell are y'all doing sending these messages out to space?" Matter of fact, when NASA sent out, you remember the whole little disc we sent out with, it has human blood in it. It has all kinds of stuff about humans in it. We sent this thing into outer space, told them how to get here, told them all about our society, told them how our body works. I mean, That's not really. We don't know who these aliens are. You don't know
Hmm.
who's going to find this out there. You don't know if they're friendly or not.
I think
And
that's
we
the
just
whole point.
and we just gave
Right.
them a sample of our blood. Really? I mean, come on. I think it was B or B or something. But
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm all for exploration, but safe exploration.
Hmm.
Let's not get the planet killed because we're in a hurry to meet ET. Because ET might not like us. ET might have a different stroke. They might come here and say, "What a pretty planet! What a bunch of ignorant insects." So it's just you got to be careful, people, when you're dealing with extraterrestrials, because regardless if we think the ones visiting now are friendly or not, doesn't matter. It's a big universe with a lot of people in it, or a lot of beings in it.
Just gonna say that the next
Yeah.
ones may not be so friendly.
And they might think we taste good or something.
I'll see that right there. That's
And I'm
just
on cholesterol medicine, so I won't even be on high cholesterol anymore. Damn, I
right
need to start
there.
taking it.
Yeah, right there. That's a
Um,
concern. So,
so,
all right, we're ready to
well, I'm
go
just
to the
saying, yeah.
next one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so now we're going to get into those who, that are speaking out. And people have been speaking out a really long time. It's not like this has just been since disclosure. So why isn't anyone listening? Some of these people know what they're talking about, and we'll explore that as we move further down. But let's start with Dr. Edgar Mitchell, who was an astronaut, of course. And aliens are real. So Dr. Mitchell was the sixth man to walk on the moon during the Apollo project in 2008. He did appear on a UK radio show and did make a claim that shocked many listeners, that aliens were in fact real. He said that he knew that we were not alone in the universe, and went on to say that the information had been covered up by governments for a very long time. He also stated that he grew up in Roswell and that the crash there was indeed real, and that he had been in the military and intelligence circles alike and is aware of what lies beneath what the public is made privy to, and that yes, we have been visited. He continued on to say, there is a picture there, I think, too, Joe. He went on to say that there was quite a bit of
Oh,
contact
look
going
like a
on, in
truck looking
fact,
guy.
and this is real and it is happening. He stated that several governments have opened their files, the Brazilians, the Mexicans, the French, for just starters. And he also made a point of saying that if aliens were hostile, we'd be gone, period. Just
Sure.
like that.
Well, it's got a point. I mean, unless they were really close to our technology and just got lucky and got here, if one of us did, we'd be dead. It's hard to argue with.
Yeah, no,
Unless,
exactly. It's, I mean, these are the guys who are within the circles. So next, John Radcliffe. He's been speaking out a lot lately, I think pre and, post disclosure. He's a former director of national defense for Donald Trump administration, oversaw 18 spy agencies. He was giving his first real public reaction to the unclassified preliminary blah, blah, blah report disclosure, and has stated that UFOs exist and appear to likely display technology that the U.S. does not possess. He says that the lack of ability to defend against as well. He has also stated that these UAPs are a matter of national security and that the real number of them to which have been observed remains unknown, at least to the public. He continued on to say that the bottom line is that UAPs, many cases, can indeed be explained away. However, there are still several instances to which everything has been ruled out, ending in zero explanation. So there's the photo for him, no photo for the next one. Also speaking out, Senator Marco Rubio, Republican for Florida.
but before you get in that stuff for a second, I
Yes,
want
of
to go back
course.
to the astronauts for a minute.
Yep.
So I've interviewed quite a few Apollo astronauts over, I think it's 7, 8, about 11 over the years, including Edgar Mitchell. By the way, I actually sat down and had lunch with Edgar Mitchell at the Washington Press Club in D.C. in 2010, I think it was. Very nice guy. We had lunch. It was actually another, Edgar Mitchell was there. I can't think of the other guy's name. And the guy who experienced the UFOs, the Foo Fighters in 1954 or 1945 actually was there. So it was two astronauts and an Air Force colonel. So it was an interesting conversation. And these guys are heroes of mine. I mean, I always wanted to be an astronaut when I went in the military. It's one of the reasons I joined the military. Because if you really want to be an astronaut, you really should go through the military to do it. And today you can do it by being science, but they prefer that you have X amount of training. Unfortunately, I never got into flight school in that case, but and they put me into advanced electronics, which probably could have still got me in, but I kind of lost interest. But I talked with these guys, and we actually talked about Neil Armstrong. And Edgar said he believed that Neil Armstrong because said that. So I actually talked to the press reporter that interviewed Neil Armstrong when he said this down in Florida, and he believed him wholeheartedly. Edgar believed him wholeheartedly, and I've not interviewed a astronaut, whether they are Apollo, Mercury, or Gemini, or Shuttle, that have not seen something in space that's unidentified, that seem to be under intelligent control. Not one. And altogether, I think I've interviewed over 20 astronauts in my 20 years in radio. So I have many. They all tell me the same thing. There's something out there, and we need to find it. And I've always said this: we train these guys, we pay these guys, we send these guys into space to look for ET. When they find it, we go, no, you didn't see nothing. You didn't see no ET. You're crazy. Really? You're letting these guys fly multi-million-dollar aircraft, and you send them back up. I mean, Neil went back up, Edgar went back up, and they didn't go up just one time, even after they sent them. And there are many tapes out there you can find for yourself of the Apollo, Mercury, and Gemini talking about what they've seen. After the first couple of times, they started talking about Santa Claus or reindeers or this, that, or other thing, making fun, but it was the description of that they were seeing a UFO at the time. That's what it meant. NASA just tried to play them off because NASA didn't know what the hell to do with it. I remember when the Mercury Gemini was flying off of Australia and all the lightning bugs came around and nobody could figure out what the hell that was still to this day. It surrounded him with these fire. They looked like he described them as fire, like lightning bugs surrounding his ship. In the movie, they said it was the Australians made a fire on the ground, the Aussies, and sent it to space. And I don't know how true that was, but it was interesting talking to him because he definitely believed by any shadow of a doubt that not only were there space people out there, but they were definitely visiting this planet. He has no doubt there was at least one base on the moon and probably base somewhere on Earth. He didn't even rule out Mars. And he had the same question I had. When Wernher von Braun built the space program, in case you didn't notice, ladies and gentlemen, Wernher von Braun did not build the space program to go to the moon. The space program was designed to go to Mars. That's what we were doing. The moon was supposed to be a testing field where we could see how well everything worked and what we would need to get us to Mars. For some reason, after Apollo, I think it was it was Apollo 17 and Apollo 16. One of them, after that, we stopped going up. The other three missions were still paid for. 18, 19, and 20 were bought and paid for, and the astronauts were trained and ready to go. And we didn't go. So they scrapped the material, even though it was paid for. Most people think it's because Edgar Mitchell had told them, not Edgar Mitchell, Neil Armstrong had told them they didn't want us coming back to the moon, or at least where they were on the moon. So after a while, we just quit going. Now, here we are, 50, 60 years later, and we're sort of thinking about going back. But right now, we just go back with rovers, and we could easily get to the moon. It's not even a hard thing for us today. And with Bezos and Elon and everybody else out there building craft, it's not a big issue. But for some reason, we're still hesitant to go back. Why? And remember this, ladies and gentlemen, the moon is full of helium-3. That layer of dust you see across the surface of the moon is helium-3. It's one of the most, this thing makes power like you wouldn't believe. If we brought it back to Earth, it would drop the cost of power by tons. But for some reason, we don't want to go mine it. Why? We got the technology. Nobody can say we don't have the technology today. You might have said in the 60s we didn't, but here in 2021, we have the tech to go out there and do it. We could do it robotically if we wanted to, but still, we won't do it. Why is that?
Makes you wonder.
Why don't you believe
what don't they want us to see,
Yeah, NASA knows something. So. NASA knows a couple of things. That's why NASA got on my hit list, because they were always my favorite thing. I always loved NASA. I've been to Cape Kennedy, Cape Canaveral. I've been to the Mission Center in Huntsville, Alabama. I've been to the one right here local at the Stennis facility. I've been about 7 of their bases. And when you talk to astronauts and you ask them the question, they don't even hesitate telling you they think extraterrestrials exist, even though they have been told by their boss not to talk about it. They still say this. But yet here we are. All this time has passed, and no one wants to believe the guys we trained and paid to go to space. Why is that? Sorry, that was a mouthful too. Y'all should not let me get on rants like that.
That's okay.
Bubbles, where are you when I need you?
Okay. No pictures for the next two. Senator Marco Rubio, Republican out of Florida, has stated that Defense Department and intelligence community have a lot of work to do before they can actually understand whether the aerial threats present a serious national security problem. So that's a big one, for them, so they say. John Brennan, former CIA director under the Obama administration, had publicly stated that some phenomena being seen continues to be unexplained and might in fact be some type of phenomenon that is a result of something not yet understood and could involve some type of activity that some would say constitutes a different form of life. See, spinning information. So people go, yeah, it sounds like a legit answer, but essentially they're just saying, it could be anything. We're not going to say it's a form of life. So you see, it's a really big explanation. It's just spinning. He has also stated that we should not disregard recent videos of UFO sightings. Now, Tucker Carlson I like because he's sort of this shoot from the hip sort of individual.
Yeah.
No, he's not everybody's cup of tea, but he does tell it like it is. And which makes people dislike him because he'll just come right out and freaking say it. But he's a fan of UFOs, apparently, and he's publicly ridiculed the inability of the U.S. with respect to their handling of the UFOs and UAPs. He has stated that in the course of 75 years that the military has collected data on a startling number of mysterious air phenomena. He has basically said that the Pentagon has given out nothing publicly and, in his opinion, is still hiding the information. He went on to state that I've been saying all along, thank you, people, among many others I know, that pretty much everything we know about UFOs comes from informants or everyday people who just put it out there. He had also made mention that the most sophisticated military in the world, hello, USA, has no idea what UFOs are and how they move from place to place, which he finds a little bit unlikely. So kudos to Tucker for just throwing out there what everybody else is thinking.
So did you know he was on investigation by the Secret Service? They just found out.
Okay. Is he under investigation by the Secret Service because he's speaking out? Or is there a real legitimate reason? I have to ask because
I don't think there's any legitimate reason. I think it's because he's speaking out about aliens and he's speaking out about Uncle Joe, sorry.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying. As soon as people speak up, all of a sudden there's an investigation. He's a journalist. That's what he does, people. Now, this next one is a favorite of mine because I've always liked Gordon Cooper, and a lot of people know him from Cooper's Treasure, a lot of his information mapped from space, and he's just awesome. But he's also, really well revered and well decorated. So that makes him pretty credible. So it's no secret that Gordon Cooper, among other NASA astronauts, was an advocate for disclosing UFO information to the public. He's been very public with his thoughts and stories all the way into his death in 2004. Hard to believe it's been that long. Anyway, he would speak very clearly about what he deemed to be conspiracy of withholding evidence and information and how it's believed that his efforts yielded the growing disclosure projects around the world. So thank you to that, Gordon. He is noted as being one of the most decorated and credible witnesses due to his service history. He was said to have spent 250 hours off the planet in the vacuum of space itself. He's also worked, right? He's also worked in the upper ranks of both the military and NASA. And let's not forget, he did spend time at Lockheed Skunk Works, which we touched on before, whom are responsible for creating all of this hardware, as they say, of the alleged black budget programs. So basically, he pretty much knew what was going on behind closed doors. He claimed that most of his personal encounters took place while he was a test pilot. 1951, he recalled being in residence in Germany at a U.S. Air Force base and would often see strange crafts in the sky. Some look like metallic saucer-shaped crafts. Others would appear over several nights. There was never much doubt to him that these were not indigenous to our planet. His most memorable experiences was on May the 3rd, 1951, I believe, during preparations for rocket launch tests at Edwards Air Force Base. Approximately 50 yards from he and his team was a saucer-shaped craft hovering in the air, and then 3 legs stretched out from the underside as it prepped to land and settle on the ground. As members of his team approached the object, it rose into the air and ascended into the sky, disappearing altogether from sight. And in 1978, he wrote an open letter to the UN, pleading with them to release the information to the public. There is a photo of that letter, Joe, right after these 3. He stressed his beliefs that ET visitors were likely arriving here from other planets and were considerably more technically advanced than we were. There's a lot of information online with respects to Gordon Cooper and his work within this whole movement. So if you want to go check it out, it's real easy to find. But here is the letter to the UN that you could blow up. And the fact that he took the time to do that, to me, is mind-blowing, because people don't just do that. And
Well,
that puts him on the line.
I met him on his 72nd birthday, and they were down in Cape Canaveral. There was 12 astronauts there. He was the first
Wow.
person I ever gave an iCar card to, ever. And
Wow.
it was the organization was, I don't know, like 6 weeks old at the time, and I had an invite. A friend of mine who was one of the hosts down there invited me down to come down, and
Wow.
I interviewed all 12 of them. I asked them all the same questions. I still have the archives. They're somewhere. They're in one of the hard tapes on the mini 8s is where they're at, and you can probably find them online somewhere too. But I was talking with him, and I reached out and I said, I work for this organization. I said, we're just looking for the truth. I said, there's enough evidence to suggest that we've been visiting, and all 12 of them on the panel when I brought this up, I was standing in the audience when I walked him, handed him the card, and I walked back and I said, no, I said, addressing all 12 of them, I said, look, I said, for me, I said, now I'm just an underling. I said, I've been studying out a long time. I said, I was in my 40s at the time. I said, I find that there's enough evidence and proof that this does exist. I said, I have a Class 10 security clearance, which, by the way, was higher than anybody on the deck at the time. All 12 astronauts, my clearance is higher than theirs. And so we got to talking. I said, do y'all think, first, I asked it like this, I said, do you think it's possible that the planet was visible? They all cracked this big shit-eating grin. I'm not kidding y'all, man. It was like, and they were like, and then you're seeing this. Nobody opened their mouths, so you seen. And then we moved on, and we got into some other questions. And because I was there actually as press to help young people get involved in the space program. But I had to ask the question because I worked for ICAR, and I was just amazed that all 12 of them said yes. And it was warming to me that they didn't get mad, they didn't get angry. They were very happy and very pleasant with it. And then, of course, when I talked with Edgar Mitchell again in D.C. a couple of years later, about 10 years later, he was like, yes, there's no doubt about this. And I can't remember the other astronaut. I have to go look him up who was there with us. But I don't know why it's slipping my name. He's a famous one, too. And it's just, for me, it's different because the original astronauts, the Apollo Mercury, I should say the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo astronauts, they were real astronauts. These were test pilots. They were already whacked in the brain. And they wanted to go in space. They wanted to go find ET. If they could got one by the foot, they would have dragged it back with them. The shuttle astronauts are different training, different things. Even though the pilots of the shuttles are usually test pilots, they weren't quite as crazy as these guys were. These guys were the guys who broke the first sound barrier that proved we could go faster than the speed of sound. These are the guys that were up there sticking their neck on the line every day to advance the American military. And yes, they were part crazy, but they really were brilliant. You got to remember, we didn't let stupid people fly our jets. These guys were brilliant. IQs, all of them, over 160. When they tell you they saw something, they saw something. And I asked, frankly, at another interview, if any of them had seen anything inside the atmosphere. All of them told me no, by the way. But everyone said they saw something in space. Matter of fact, all the Mercury astronauts said that they were buzzed at least 2 times while they were in space. One of them said they were buzzed so fast that it made the craft tumble, and they had to re-straight it. And back in the day, there was no automated controls from the ground. They had to do it by stick. It was a whole different thing. The fact that these people were out there doing this and we still don't take them serious, it's just heartaches. I mean, these guys really. And then when you hear like what's his name, John Carter, whatever his name was, when he made videos from the space shuttle, and everybody said he was crazy. NASA kicked him off the program because of it, and he went public and put the videos public. They were still available. I'll get the right name for y'all, and still nobody wanted to believe him. There's several times that the shuttle was buzzed. There's been several times that the Skylab had been buzzed. There's been several times the International Space Station has been buzzed. I have heard
We've shown
a
that.
dozen. Yes, yeah, we have, and I know at least a dozen Russian astronauts that have said the same thing. ET is real.
Mm.
So you've got them
We've
from both
shown that
countries
on
telling
this
you
show.
that. Yeah. And it's a shame that our media, this isn't the government, because the government let them talk. The government could have shut them down, but they didn't. So you got Russian and American astronauts telling you ET is real, but for some reason our media is like, it's an alien. There's just, ladies and gentlemen, there needs to be credibility for our media now. There seems to be none anymore. There seems to be they can say whatever they want, and there's no consequences. There needs to start being consequences for our media now because they know this is true. they've got film and tons of evidence they just won't release because somebody up at the top saying, no, 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 the government said don't do it. Or
So you
somebody,
have to rely on independent media who doesn't follow on. So follow the little guy, people, because they're the ones that are going to give it to you straight. They're the one. They're not all owned by these conglomerates, controlled.
I did an interview about 6 weeks ago, and the lady calls in, really, really smart lady. Really, she works for an electronics company. I can mention who it was, and she said, "Well," she said, "Why should I believe you?" I said, "Well, my pedigree's as long as my leg." She's like, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, first I was in the Navy on board USS Nimitz. I said I was trained in aircraft recognition. I said, in advanced recognition because we had to always know what was coming in. I said, besides that, I got degrees in avionics, electronics, advanced avionics, advanced electronics. I said, I've got voice stress analysis. I said, I've got facial recognition, body language recognition. I said, advanced hypnosis. I said, and it just goes and goes and goes. I said, I could sit here for another 10 minutes. I said, but just the aircraft stuff is more than enough to tell you. I said, advanced avionics, that means I know everything about these planes. I said, I know how a plane acts inside the atmosphere. And when I see one go, no, it's not ours. Even the drones we have today still can't reproduce some of these, even though the drones are getting close now. Drones can actually reproduce a lot of stuff that people see in UFOs, but they can't reproduce the speeds, and they can't just poof out of the atmosphere and disappear. But they can do some of the maneuvers. But still, here we are. We just can't replicate this. And if you talk about the Foo Fighters, it's 70 years and we still can't replicate this. If you talk about the stuff they seen in the 1800s, it's been over 150 years and we still can't reproduce it. But yet we want to say it wasn't real. Well, that's insane. And then you've got people like the Brits, the French, the Germans, the Brazilians, the Mexicans are all releasing. I mean, Mexico, every time it gets a video, it releases it. They don't even care anymore. They're like, oh, yeah, put it out to the public. There's been like 11 of them released in the last 3 years.
Do that. A lot of countries.
And
so why
why is it
that some companies don't? Other countries do.
And why wouldn't it be?
There's some countries that are very forthcoming.
There are. But why couldn't Russia or China be the disclosure? Why does it have to be America? Why does the whole world expect the truth from America when they know this country lies?
But they have disclosed to a degree. They have disclosed to a degree. Russia was one of the first, actually. I remember reading about Air Force records 3 years ago.
But disclosure means, but disclosure means that the head of your state comes out and said, yes, we are being visited by extraterrestrials and they're real. No one's ever done that in any country. To date, nobody's
going to talk about extraterrestrials.
No big leader has come out and said that. Why? Even though they're releasing it, I've watched videos, like I was watching the Mexican president before this one, when they released those 3 videos. He's like, look, guys, we don't know what these are. He said, maybe they are extraterrestrials. He said, I really don't know if they're extraterrestrial or not. He said, I don't know. And then, like what Joseph just puts China's been around for 5,500 years, just like India. India and China has steep cultures with things that fly around in the sky and things that existed. But yet even their leaders won't come forward and say they exist. Why?
No. And I believe all countries know more than they let on, because otherwise you're tipping your hat and you are giving out too much information. And nobody wants to do that. They're going to, especially when it comes to ET, they don't.
No, they don't want to. But last year, Xi Jinping was asked at one of the meetings in Europe. No, wait, it was the year before that because Trump was still president. Was asked at one of the meetings, what does he know about extraterrestrials? He said, I defer that to Donald Trump. Maybe you should ask the Americans what they know. He said, because obviously they know more than the rest of us. So, I mean, here you got the second most powerful nation in the world telling you that go ask the most powerful one because they're the one that knows. So that tells you right there, yes, China knows something, but they don't know enough. Just like India knows. India's got 1,000 years worth of culture of flying wars in their skies. I mean, you can go look it for yourself, people. But yet they won't come forward. All of South America, this is so steep inside. Yeah, we're talking about this too. I mean, this is so steeped in South America that people were boarding their children's head to make them look like the aliens. But still, we won't talk about it.
No, but it's funny. This show has actually educated people more on even going back to ancient times. A lot of that stuff, emulation. We've talked about cultures. Like, why do people have to learn more from watching shows such as The Gray Zone, or people independently coming out and bringing all of the information, rolling it all into one, connecting some of the dots? This is something that it's out there. It's out there, and people, like I said, they're armed with camera phones. People have experiences all the time, and they're coming out and they're just saying it. So, I think
And,
if people want to learn anything, don't wait for the government. You're not going to get
and
it
that's
from the
another
government.
good thing. I'm glad you said that. So I was listening to this researcher the other night, and then I heard Cheryl mention this on your show the other night.
Yeah.
That everybody there's more evidence. No, there's not. Go
Right.
online and look at the pictures and see what
Right.
the dates of the pictures are. If you go from 70 back, there is just tons of pictures. If you go
Yep.
from 70 forward, there is not. They have gotten to be less and less, and everybody's carrying a camera around today. But I've said this before. If you're
Yeah.
within inside of a mile of the craft, you're not going to get a decent picture. Something, the way they drive or whatever operates them, just screws with your cameras. I don't
Hmm.
think it's intentional either. I just think it's their system. But if you're outside a mile away, you can get some good pictures. And I have over the years got a couple of good ones. And one of my favorite ones was a guy in Brazil got this picture over a desert down there. You see, at first, it's a video, not a picture, actually. You see this like dust storm kicking up. You're like, wow. But you can see it's only going so high and it's rolling back down. So it looks like it's hitting something. Then all of a sudden, it looks like one of them ships out of Independence Day when it's coming through the clouds. That's what it looks like. And you see
Hmm.
this big, big, massive thing coming over. It's a great picture. The guy worked for the government. He's got impeccable credibility, and still, people, oh, that's fake. It's too, and if it's too good, it's fake.
So
Even though it's not always
why
fake.
are people so quick to judge whether
They're
what's fake
scared
and what's not? It's unless
because
it's properly analyzed, you don't
it's not
know.
even that. I have learned over the years when I interview normal people,
Right.
like when we do the telepath tests at malls and stuff. When I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking to people, this scares a lot of people, a lot more people than you think. Well,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 1 out of 50 are actually embracing it. The other 49 are not really, because it's either interferes with their religion or it just scares them that there may be something out there more advanced than we are. And they're not going to share that. And part of me thinks, oh shit, these guys are coming to our planet. One day they might decide we look good, taste good, our women look good, our husband, whatever it could be. But yet that hasn't happened yet.
Mm-hmm.
We're still here now. I agree they take people, but they put them back, at least for
Mm-hmm.
now. But more and more people in 2021, you would think that we had grown a set, but we haven't. It seems like it's gotten worse. Be honest with you, it bothers the blank out of me because I look at people like, look, you are the ones who are going to get to the truth. Stand up and say what is going on, and we want the truth. And if you do that, somebody's going to disclose. But if you get this mousy crap where you put your face down and you look away, or you get this scared look, they're not going to tell you anything.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I'll tell you what, after I talked with my friend in Boeing about the craft in Stevensville, about a week after that, I got 7 different calls from people in the government asking me, am I going to disclose this? How am I going to handle this? I said, yes. I said, this is the truth of the matter, too. I was asked not to release the original video that we took because there was a lot more detail in that than what we're talking about now. They said, we don't mind if you talk about it, and we don't even mind that you say it's ours, Mr. Montaldo. And anytime they start calling me Mr. Montaldo, I instantly get worried. Um, so I'm like, well, what do you want me to do with this? I said, it's definitely not alien. He said, well, we were hoping just to play it off like that. He said, but you pretty much ruined that for us. He said, yes, you can go ahead and say that it was maybe an Aurora craft. And that's what I did. I said it was an Aurora craft. That's what it looked like. I said it's an Aurora craft. And that's what it got played off at. And it was some type of advanced craft like that, some ram scoop, something that was really fast. Because the guys told me when it blew past, when the chases were staying on the side of it, and this is what made me call my friend. They had 2 rows of engine. There was 8 on top, 8 on bottom. And they glue red, and the ship started moving. Then they popped out white, and it was boom. It was like cruising across the sky. And I had heard someone that I knew, a friend of mine that worked in the lab, had told me about the new engine. And he said that's how it worked. And I remembered hearing that, so that's what made me call her, and she verified it for me. Which she didn't have to, but she couldn't get in trouble because my clearance was high. And that's one of the nice things about what I do. I do have a high enough clearance that I get pervy information that I get to keep for myself. And maybe I'll put it all in a book just before I'll die and I'll release it or something. But I doubt it. But still, it's nice to hear your own theories verified. And it is nice for me because I can go out and talk with confidence that, yes, this is what this craft was. So they verified it for me. I knew exactly what it was after that. And I called my friends at MUFA and said, look, you just make an ass out of yourself. I said, I can prove now exactly what the craft was. Then they started on me, oh, it didn't have this, it didn't have that. I said, it most certainly did. I said, would you like me to play back the video for you of the guys talking to it? And then, of course, after that, they shut up and left it alone. But in the end, people, it's up to us. We have to disclose. You can get the contact these. I mean, there's 1.5 billion people this has been disclosed to. And a lot of them are willing to talk about it, but you're not going to believe them. You're going to say, "Oh, they're crazy. Oh, they've been this or that. They're on drugs. They've been
But they're
drinking,
taking a
whatever."
chance too. So
They are.
kudos to them, you
They are.
know.
And you'd be surprised how many of these people, I remember the first time I interviewed somebody about this, somebody high up, and he goes, "Let's just trailer trash that sees UFOs." And I got pissed, actually. I did. I got pissed. I said, "Excuse me?" I said, "First off, I haven't even talked to anybody that lives in a trailer yet." And I said, "It's just a shame that you say somebody that lives in a trailer is trash to start off with. Shame on you." I said, "I know a lot of people live in trailers that are not trash." I said, "He just pissed me off." And I was like, I said, "The majority of these cases happen inside of big cities, dude. Explain that." And he didn't even want to go there after that. He was just, "Oh, no." And he hemmed and hawed and hawed and hemmed and hawed. I've got a lot of these you can find on UFO Undercover that's still available today. They're still in archives up there. Where I've brought a bunch of these big guys on and talked about it, different people in the government. But in the end, I can get individuals to come clean, but I cannot get the federal government to step up as Joe Biden and say, well, you know what? I'm going to dress up like Joe Biden, let my beard go white and all, and get my face done. Like, "Hi, I'm Joe Biden. And you know what? Extraterrestrials are real." They'll probably come get me after that, but still.
Impersonating the president of the United States. It could happen.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I don't think they'll appreciate that. Of course, I'm better looking than he is. So, right
Well,
off the bat.
that's absolutely.
Of course, Joan is better looking than he is. So that's just saying,
Okay,
we're UAP.
we have to because we have a lot to cover.
Ooh, yeah, we got lots of stuff. We've been yapping all day.
Well, now that we're on the topic of sightings, we're going to get into it. So the first one does have a photo in France. This event occurred in France. This is fairly, well, I won't say fairly recent, but it's been in the last decade or so. The event occurred in France. It was a strange cigar-shaped alien craft. There it is, which emitted bands of intense light. It was seen by many people throughout the area. Experts are saying that this event could be linked to other sightings in China back to 2010 and Australia back to 2014. This event itself, I think, is fairly recent. Sorry. So what has fascinated many of the researchers was the fact that there were two flashing spheres that were moving right next to the larger craft, as you can see in the photo here.
Now, maybe I can tell you what this is. I ain't 100% sure because the picture's kind of funky. See, they look like
sorry.
So this is a weird thing that we found out. We used to get all these things. Oh, it's a rectangular craft. And sometimes it's got one bump on the end. Sometimes it's got a bump in the middle. Sometimes it's got 3 or 4 bumps. Sometimes it's got some on the bottom. What we realized was these little things were landed on them. And they go halfway into the craft and half of it sticks out. So it changes the description of the craft because when it's sitting there, wherever it lands now, it's a straight line with a bump. And sometimes it looks like they could hold 4 on top and 4 on bottom, 8 of these craft. So this is either a scout craft, landing craft, could be a fighter of some sort. There's no way of really knowing. But they actually land on the craft and merge with the craft. They just lock into place.
That's crazy.
Weird. It was always weird. But we had to figure it out because we kept getting all these rectangulars, and they were like 1 bump, 3 bump, 1 bump, 2 bump, 3 bump, 4 bump. What the hell is going on here? What are these aliens on drugs or something?
Is this a specific type of ET or ship, or is this pretty much all of them?
No, this is a specific alien, but I can't tell you. That's abduction criteria. But I can tell you it is. So I'll tell you all this much. If you can figure out what this craft is, then you'll know who this belongs to. So y'all know I've said before the saucers belong to the grays, the triangles belong to the humans, and the elongated saucers belong to the reptilians. So you figure it out. Once you know what kind of craft this is, you'll know what it is. But it's going to be hard to tell because it just looks like a giant orb right there. And you don't know how big this craft actually is.
No.
In the sky. So you would have to find out where the picture was taken from, what the proper distance is, and that would tell you what size the craft is. And that's another thing while we're on that for all my UFO seeking friends. Remember, when you're videotaping, get something else in the picture. Get a pole, a light, a beach, a thing.
For reference.
Hit the horizon so you know the difference in height. Because, if you're shooting out over the ocean, you hit the horizon, we know the difference. If you see a cloud cluster and it's above or below it, you know how high it is. It also gives you a chance to figure out the size. Y'all see I have cut quite a few videos up on YouTube down to JoJoMon63. And some of those will show you what I'm talking about. And this way you can try to get an idea of size and distance for your own self. And then you can put it. And remember, Airport Monitor works worldwide, not just in America. It tracks all airplane movement across the country, even military airplane movement. So if you've got that, you can rule it out right off the bat. Was it an airplane? You look on it. You know where you're at. You're looking at, Oh, no, nothing flying here. Then you go over to J-track. Oh, no satellites in the air, no airplanes in this area. Automatic, you rule out anything man-made. So now you're only left with atmospheric conditions, which I actually took a course on, by the way. I actually took 2 courses on it. Or it's an alien craft, or not alien craft, but some type of UFO. So it helps you to eliminate man-made stuff right off the bat. So using people that are out there for that. When I found it, a friend of mine gave me Airport Monitor 2, which only had 7 airports on it, but it was all airports where I live. Now I have the advanced one that has all the United States, Canadian, Mexican. You can even go to Europe with it. I mean, you got to pay a little bit more when you go to Europe because it switches over aircraft. But I mean, airports. But it shows you all of them, and they'll tell you unlisted flight, listed flight, military flight, helicopter. They'll even tell you if it's like a glider or something like that. And somebody's telling me now it's even got drones connected to it, so you can tell if it's a drone. So you can really go see. Well, in case you don't know, drones flying over 100 feet have to be registered now. You can go to jail if they're not. So if you're flying in the air, so you can find out what that is too. So you can really do your homework. And if you don't have Airport Monitor, yeah, you can go on your computer once you know where you're at and look around and see. But those tools help you limit. That's the difference between a professional researcher and not so much of a professional researcher. I'm trying to be nice about it, but we've developed tools over the years to really help this along, and those are 2 of the best tools you can use. I mean, and if you understand atmospheric stuff, and if you don't, you can go online, like say you're in, let's say this is in Paris, you can type in atmospheric conditions in Paris. Have there been any type of these? And if it comes up no, you can rule it out. I actually got I wouldn't say a degree, and I just took 2 years of it. And then I got advanced avionics, advanced electronics, and then of course there's Airport Monitor. I pulled this on Neil deGrasse Tyson because he tried to be a smartass with me online one time. I said, Neil, please, I'm not an amateur. And I told him what I was doing. He said, shit, you're not an amateur. It's his words, not mine, by the way. He's like, no. I said, we don't play around with this. We're here to find out what's going on in our space, whether it's ours or somebody else's, Russian, German, whatever it might be, alien, whoever. I said, I'm not reeling out that somebody's not visiting our planet. I'm not ruling out there's something more advanced in the universe than us. And I said, can you rule out that there's something out there more advanced? And he had to say no, because he can't say that. He's been a real ass, by the way, in case you don't know this, about stuff. I'm going to try to get him on again pretty soon because I've been watching some of the post crossing Facebook because I'm on his Facebook page, and he's been kind of an ass about this. And he said, if you take this, or if you had courses in this, and this, I wrote, and I said, I've got all those courses plus this. I said, now please tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. He wouldn't even respond because in those kind of things, because it'll make him look bad. I don't care how many books you got under your belt. If you're not looking at this the right way, it doesn't matter. And there is a professional way people look at things, and there's an amateur way. And we do it in a professional way. That's why my videos get put on TVs. Just saying, people, you want to get put out there. If you want people to see your work, then do it the way you can eliminate stuff. And the best thing is when you're talking, always talk while you're doing a video so people know what you're seeing, what your action, what your response is, and how you're going to either debunk this or prove this. It really helps other people out there to take better pictures. Just saying. And this don't even look like it was taken by a phone camera. It was talking about something else like a regular camera. Now you see Tyson, I mean not Tyson, Keiko had no problem thinking there's aliens out there. He didn't like the idea that they might be visiting there until him and I went across the stepping stone theory, which I didn't go over with Neil, but I should have. Once him and I discussed the stepping stone theory, then he was like, well, I guess they could be here. And I like someone like that. He didn't say they were here. He just acknowledged the fact that maybe under these conditions they could be here. And that's all you need. You don't need any more than that. Because he hasn't seen anything, so why should he say aliens exist? Mm-hmm. We were just trying to get him to, admit that under the right conditions and the right evidence, this could be going on. And he admitted to it, so that's all I needed. He's a nice guy, by the way.
Okay, next then. Aurora, Texas. There'll be 3 photos attached to this. So this is going into the Wayback Machine, but it goes to show you that if stuff like this was being printed in the paper, then I'm going to guess that somebody in the higher-ups at this point would be paying some kind of attention. So April 19th, 1897, an incident occurred where a mystery airship, is the term of the day back then, not UFOs, came from the sky at a high rate of speed and crashed into a windmill which belonged to a Judge James Spencer. The pilot perished and was pulled from the wreckage and described as petite and Martian, funny enough. It was allegedly buried under a tree branch in Aurora Cemetery, and the wreckage was allegedly dumped in a nearby well located under the windmill. Other reports had surfaced between April 15th and the 19th from 21 different towns who had also seen or had sightings. Fast forward to the 1920s when the new owners of the property, or with the new owners of the property, many people tried to actually dig up this alien body, but were stopped by locals at gunpoint. Just saying. Mr. Oates, the new property owner, finally cleaned out the debris in order to use the well. He had just had enough with everybody coming around. Also, he suffered from arthritis, due to which he claimed came from the contaminated well water because of this space debris. He sealed it up, put a concrete slab over it, and placed an outbuilding over top of the slab. It became a place of controversy over future decades, with UFO researchers trying to locate the wreckage, and worse yet, the body. A lawsuit actually occurred, and the grave marker was stolen. Today's site is marked only with a boulder, and a Dallas lawyer is offering up $1,000 for the return of the original marker. There are pictures of those, the marker and the stone. And of course, those who don't believe the event happened at all. So who's to say, right?
No,
But
Jim Mars and I discussed
it's
this in
interesting.
great detail. Yeah. We did. Jim Mars and I got into this case, the Texas airship case. We got into it in great detail. I love Jim Mars because he was an impeccable researcher. And then I talked with Ted Phillips about this too, who also was an impeccable researcher. There was actually some really good UFO researchers around for a while. And the problem we all had was it could have been alien, but it could have also been a dirigible of some kind. And we just didn't know. There was no way of knowing because no one, other than the original witnesses. And there was a couple of attempts to retrieve the metals from in the ground, but it just, after what's his name pulled it all out, it just, there wasn't nothing left, or nobody saw anything left. And it just got to the point where they were like, well, we can't really prove anything. So the case just kind of faded.
I think he just got fed up with people coming around.
Yeah, well, because in the end, they couldn't prove anything. Everybody was trying to, but no one could really actually prove anything. And, nobody could find the body. And if it was truly an ET, they would have retrieved the body anyway. So there wouldn't have been nothing to find in the first place.
Maybe somebody did. Maybe government did before everybody else.
They might have come out if they heard about it. But in the if I remember my history correctly, when it first crashed, it didn't really make it outside of the area for quite some time. It was, I think they said 40 or 50 years before it actually got into mainstream news and stuff. And that would have been when the government found that, unless the government was tracking. But back then, we're talking the 1800s, they didn't have radar. So they wouldn't have been tracking. No. It would have been word of mouth. And plus, there was no news wire or anything like that. So that kind of stuff would have just been, it would have just been a local thing. But, we did try. Jim and I both tried to look and see, and Phil did too, to see if we could find any missing dirigibles or anything that would be like a dirigible that had been put up in the air. Because, Roswell tried to say it was a balloon that crashed in Roswell, which we all just laughed about. and the dummies they said it was in it didn't even exist at the time. That was the dummies they said it was in the Roswell crash that they found hadn't even been invented yet for another 10 years after the case, by the way. Jim debunked that. I mean, he debunked that like in 15 minutes. And Stanton Friedman jumped on it too. And I talked to Stanton Friedman about this case too. And, I've actually talked to some big wigs about this. And the problem is there was no access to anything. And the people who said they retrieved the stuff, let me get it straight in my head, said they were like framework and iron beams and stuff like that. It didn't sound extraterrestrial. It sounded more terrestrial. But then we don't know what really spacecraft are made out of. It's hard for us to say. And it could have been some kind of prototype for us. We just don't know.
Well, it makes it interesting because, this goes, we've covered many accounts that go back, hundreds of years, thousands of years. And it's always interesting to me when I'm researching, the princess is on the air with us.
It's an alien. It's an alien. It's an alien.
Chihuahuas are friggin' aliens for sure. It never ceases to amaze me how many stories are actually out there, and it's just fascinating to me because back then it's not like there was this huge lingo. It wasn't a big movement. People just saw something, explained it, and that was it. And the next one, also photo, is kind of the same, and it's recent. And I'm sort of surprised. I'm not surprised really, but it just shows it's not just the Americans, which is why I wanted to include this. It was a mummified alien in an Egyptian pyramid, in the Great Pyramid,
Why is
actually.
there an
It,
American penny on it?
hmm?
Why is there an American penny on it? That's an American penny right there.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe somebody visiting.
That's
Well, it was in
weirdness.
Texas. It was in Texas, after all.
That's cool.
Okay, next one was a mummified alien. One article stated that in 1988, an ancient Egyptian expert, Louis Caprat, actually discovered an alien mummy in a secret chamber of the Great Pyramid. It was allegedly laying in a transparent crystal coffin and appeared to be hibernating. It appeared to be humanoid, or maybe hybrid of ET, human DNA. There was a papyrus that was found near the body, which told of an encounter between this being and the pharaoh Khufu. The story goes on further to say that this encounter convinced Khufu to build the Great Pyramid as a tomb for this ET being after he had announced that others like him would be arriving in the future. Caprat did send a message to Spain with instructions to a colleague named Francisco de Braga to come to Egypt and take samples and cell tissues, blood, DNA from dead aliens. Now, this was pluralized, interestingly enough. Upon his arrival, he was detained by the Egyptian Minister of State Security and sent back to Madrid. The dead aliens were then taken to a lab in a secret location and kept hidden by the Egyptian military intelligence. So, again, seems to be a bit of a trend, but
Could
again,
be a
not
brain.
just US. It's everywhere. This is something being hidden everywhere. This little alien, if that indeed is the case, laid in this tomb for how long, only to be, again, go MIA.
What's
So
funny about it is the alien's probably still alive. That's just a shell. They probably haven't
exactly,
separated to its defenses. Well, let's examine it. It could be a gray, even though the ears are a little big. The
could be
head's
a little
head's
person too.
almost there. Head's almost there. It also has the thumb and three fingers, which is the grays only have 4 digits. The human aliens have 6, and their head would be a little longer than this. It'd actually be a little shorter on top and a little longer. So
But they're saying
this part would
possibly
stick out.
hybrid, though.
It could be a hybrid, but I doubt it.
Yeah.
It's
So
probably a 3-foot gray or a 4-foot gray. And
if
it's just
this
the way
is
it's sticking
even the
across.
one, we don't know. Apparently photographs were taken, but we don't know if they were confiscated. This was just a stock photo that came up, but it came up often, so it may be the only one, if any, that is public. Um,
Well, it's cool looking at.
Now, the next one is a super interesting story also. This was a man named Gosta Carlson out of Sweden. There are 2 photos with this. This account is not known outside of Sweden for the most part. However, it's said to be one of the most amazing stories in the field of ufology. The story goes that an evening of May 18th, 1946, Gosta was walking through the woods on a dark, peaceful evening and noticed streaks of bright lights nearby. He went on to climb a small hill and saw a brightly lit disc-shaped object. He couldn't really find an explanation for what it was, as he'd never seen one, and no one really ever spoke of flying saucers or UFOs back then. He claimed that it was shaped like a disc and stood on 2 telescopic supports. It had a ladder on the lower part with a hatch like on ships. He saw a cockpit with light. And at the top of the object was an oval cabin about 8 meters in diameter with oval windows and in 1 meter intervals and approximately 30 centimeters in height. At the top of the cockpit, there appeared to be a periscope, roughly 4 meters high. He also noted that the object pulsed slightly like water in a fountain and had a strong smell of ozone. He went on to describe beings which appeared to be 3 men and 3 women, all dressed in one-piece suits with same boots and belts. So uniforms, I guess. He continued to watch them from afar. The story continues on, but he ultimately went back to the woods during the day. The next day, found heavily crushed and burnt grass with imprints from the supports, found 2 mugs from which the crew drank from, and still contained a fragrant yellowish liquid in them. So he found a gold ring and a transparent crystal rod engraved with symbols, which he noted were very similar to Scandinavian runes. He never allowed anyone to examine them, and by the 1970s, he suddenly became the director of wealthy pharmaceutical companies named Cellnel and Allergan, and to which he claimed medicines were made from the healing drink left behind by the aliens. These drugs allegedly slowed down aging. it's a lengthy stories guide, but you guys can find this, anywhere online. In 2003, he died of a stroke and took his secrets to the grave with him. His artifacts and documents have never been found. So as you can see in the
I'm
pictures,
thinking we should write
there's
these aliens a
the
ticket
ring.
for polluting. I mean, they threw their
Well,
cups on the ground and dropped their ring down there. Man, we need to find him, get him a ticket, man. Polluting our planet
or
like
did
that.
they
Shame on their
purposely
ass.
leave them to be found? Because
They could have.
they're superior beings. I'm pretty sure they would have known that they were being watched.
No, they
Maybe
already
it
knew
was
they were
just,
watched.
yeah. So maybe it was their way of saying, here, let's see what you do with this. Maybe he was visited for years afterwards. We don't really know because it doesn't
Odds
really
are,
say.
odds are he was taken there and put back. He probably
Yeah.
just didn't realize it. Lost a couple hours, just didn't realize it.
Right.
Because you're
Which
just
would
not
make
going to.
sense.
Yeah, they're not going to just let you walk up on their craft. And if you're getting gifts, they have given people gifts before. It's not the first person I've heard that has recovered stuff, but usually they'll give it to you or hand it to you or put it in your pocket or something.
Yeah. There's
I know
two
a
more
friend.
photos.
I know a
Sorry.
friend, a lady friend of mine who was given a crystal wand, and I tell you what, she puts it on your head, and knocks your ass right out. It's
Ah,
she still got it even to this day. We tried to get her to let it send. She said, "If I send it research, I'll never get it back." I said, "She's probably right. She probably won't." It's, well, I mean, you know how people are, especially the government. Who is a different one? It's it's kind of. And
yes.
you know what's funny about this particular craft? It kind of sounds like the craft that Larry Warner and them talked about at Rendlesham. And John Burroughs and the rest of them, they described the craft close to this. They do describe the three pod marks in the ground after the ship had left. So it's not the first case I've heard where there's physical evidence left behind. It's
Right.
but there's
So
not a lot of
they're
physical
out there. But this is a
evidence.
point where this guy ends up with these items and information. Is it that he escaped having all this confiscated or escaped anything really because it wasn't a well-known case? Because he would talk about this. This guy would go around and he would show people the items and he would let people see them, but he never allowed them to be examined. He never wanted them touched. And I mean, let's face it, he ended up being director of two pharmaceutical companies, did quite well for himself. So definitely something going on.
Yeah, so they hired Crazy Cracker to come run this
Maybe.
pharmaceutical.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, they might have gave him something that did do something. I mean, unfortunately, we'll never know because he's gone and nobody's going to tell us.
Yeah. Okay, this is the three photos here is a pilot named Giancarlo Sacconi from the Air Force in Italy. He pilots a G-91R fighter plane. He was returning to the Treviso, Italy with his group of 14 of the Air Force's 2nd Fighter Wings on June 18, 1979. The Astrana Radar Center registered an intruder presence, and Giancarlo was instructed to approach this craft or unidentified aircraft, which entered a restricted area. He activated the cameras, approached the UFO at a distance of roughly 70 to 80 meters at roughly a speed of 450 to 500 kilometers. This object was emitting a strange blue trail. He went on to pursue the object at an altitude of about 7,000 feet. He eventually captured 82 frames as he photographed it over 7 to 8 flights near the object. Its speed was undetermined. The object was described as a matte black cylinder with a small, white or transparent dome located on the upper side, no less than 26 feet long, 3 feet in diameter, flying at 13,000 feet. When he landed, the photos were taken away for development and analysis. Blah. Speak, Michelle. You can do it. Use your words. So anyway, fudge. So this is, another example of, one of an Air Force pilot capturing images that, it's all over the internet. So we don't know. Like, again, a disclosure thing. This is something that the government in Italy had. And it's not like he could just go off and say, oh, hey, here they are. Like these were on the plane. He had no access to this stuff. And yet here it is.
Yeah, it's weird because there's a bump right there and there's a bump right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it might be just the one picking up craft if it's going by.
Now, so to you, this is cylinder shaped. So this would be
It could just
reptilian.
be it could be one of the ones picking up the craft they had out there. It might be retrieval craft. I basically call them aircraft carriers in the air, which eventually we'll have ourselves. But
Right.
um, it's just something that picks up other ships as it's going by and hauls. It's probably bigger than it looks. That's probably
Mm.
why I was having such a hard time with it. But still, it had to be in float mode or something if he was able to get pictures. And that means their
82
engines were
frames. That's a lot of pictures.
yeah. That means
That's
his engine.
sweeping by like 7 or 8 times.
That means their engines were off. That nothing. There's nothing to distort the pictures.
Oh,
Just cruising on by. Because usually, like I said, usually you get distortion, and there is some distortion in these, but not a lot. I mean, you can see the runway pretty good underneath there.
hmm.
Speaking of that, I wonder where airport it's flying over. See, I wonder
Um,
because they
it,
should have been a radar image from here. This is definitely an
it
airport.
said the Estrana Radar Center. Estrana, I'm guessing
So
Italy.
it might have been checking out radar systems or
Yeah,
learning how a radar worked or something. Making sure it's yeah. You're good. Sorry, you got an
that's
animal
okay.
bugging. It's
Um, Go ahead.
but these kind of pictures are good. You look at them, you wonder what they are. They're military pictures. It's hard
Hmm.
to debunk a military picture. You got to wonder what it is. It's just floating across the sky.
But it's also an old image. It's not like, we're not in digital times here where you can fudge it. The only way you can fudge it once it gets to a computer.
Yeah.
So
And
that
so
also
back
makes
then,
it credible.
what you would have had to do is you would have had to take the negative and overlay a negative on it, and then repicture it, which only a handful of people could have done back then.
Hmm.
It's not an easy thing to fake. Today, it's a lot easier to fake, and it's easy to debunk things in the old days because it's a grayscale. So you can pick up the grayscale and see how it is, and if there's a digital drop if there's a drop in the grayscale from like 1 to 30 or something, it's been faked. It should be a smooth
Right.
across the thing. So uh,
Right.
it's an interesting photo. It's one I haven't seen, so that's cool. I always like seeing stuff that's new. And it is
I like
interesting
it.
that it's floating over a dam, but it looks like it's floating. I don't see any propulsion or anything. Just seems
It's
it might not even be floating. It
interesting.
might just be hanging out.
It's a really up close picture, which is interesting because usually they're so far off. I think you'll find this next one interesting. It's one of those out of place things, but it just goes to show you how far back this stuff goes. The Yucatan Peninsula, a 12,000-year-old microchip. So it's reported that a group of divers went cave driving into the Sakatan system in the Yucatan. Sakatan, oh God, say that 3 times. They found some 12,000-year-old skeletons. Archaeologist Guillermo de Anda stated that he believed one human skull, which was wrapped in limestone, was covered there also. He stated that the ancient Mayan Indians went there looking for water way back when, and researchers have found the skull to be rather interesting because upon further study, they simply stopped talking about it. A Mexican journalist, God, I'm struggling today, Pedro Sanchez, alleged to have been given confidential details from an informant, claiming that the skull had an artificial implant in it. And experts examined it further and determined that the chip had been inserted some 12,000 years before. Like what?
Mm.
C'est
Maybe it
quoi?
was because Yucatan Peninsula is where the asteroid supposedly crashed that wiped out all Earth on. Well, wiped out everything on Earth that allowed us to come. In case y'all noticed, ladies and gentlemen, without the big mass extinction, the last one, humans wouldn't be here. We weren't big enough. We weren't predators enough to fend off the raptors and the other
Hmm.
dinosaurs. See, we had a fair chance against lions and tigers and elephants, but when it came to velociraptors and stuff, we didn't have a chance. Or big condors flying over and just sucking people off. I mean, there was too many things that could eat us then. But today it's a little different. So because of the asteroid hit 63 million years ago, 50, how many ever it was, it allowed humans to develop. Without that, we would have never developed. Um, Unless, aliens put us in. Even then, aliens wouldn't have put us in that because they know we got eaten.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it was somebody
Yeah,
here coming to look for it. So
they would have been
maybe it wasn't
eaten
an
also.
asteroid. Maybe it was a ship that crashed. A big intact
Well, I mean, who
spacecraft would
else
have
would
done
have
the
put?
same thing.
Who could have put in?
Oh, no, nobody
But
we
who
know
could
ever.
have had the technology to put a microchip in one of these more primitive ancient people's
And this
brains
skull right
in
here
their
is
head?
very interesting.
Right. Look at
That's
the eyes on it,
Yeah, that's a
the
very
sockets.
interesting skull. Yeah. So I mean, I don't
So
know. I doubt anything dealing with a microchip that long ago had to be advanced alien technology. It wouldn't have been us.
there we
And it
go.
is cool. It's cool that it's kind of shaped like the microchips we use today. And it's what we said about Roswell. It looks like maybe
Makes you
that's where
wonder
we.
where that, yeah, like where that technology come from is what I'd want to know. So it's like 12,000 years ago, and
But
bam,
we
there it
do know
is.
12,000 years ago there was life.
There was.
We know that in the Indians because of those two cities we found, there was
Yeah.
advanced life, at least city type advanced life, which we didn't think happened. Remember, they try to make us think 6,000 years ago was when everyday civilized life started on the planet, but it's not true. We know the
Hmm.
Indians had two big cities with 250,000 people each in them that were wiped out by probably a tsunami or something. We found them because of a tsunami. We've also found cities off the coast of Cuba, the coast of Japan, and then this Bimini Road. I mean, there's a lot of stuff we've been
Hmm.
finding that suggests that there was life much earlier, before the Ice Age. The Ice
Hmm.
Age came and kind of wiped it out. It was 10,000 years of Ice Age, which allowed the water to drop and all that other stuff, which allowed everybody to bloom, and grow. And somewhere
Hmm.
along that time, the timeline there, we were more advanced than we thought we were. I guess because of the Ice Age, we went backwards a long ways, but in the end, uh,
Or is it that we've just been suppressed somewhere
well,
along the
no.
lines?
So let's look at it like from this point of view. So another 100 years from now, there will be everything will be digital. The libraries will be pretty much gone. All the advanced knowledge from now on will be on microchip or on storage and hard drives. So if a big catastrophe happens, like a nuclear war, you won't be able to access. You'll only be able to access the technology that's still in books. And back then, they didn't
Mm-hmm.
even have books. They had just little plates and charts. It would have been like an earthquake. A lot of that would have got lost. So here, if a nuclear war happened, we would lose all the advanced knowledge and a lot of our paper knowledge. So we'd basically be starting from scratch, living back in caves, living in, we'd have reverted because that's what humans
Mm-hmm.
do when they don't have the technology. So that's where we would. Now, we might not reverted all the way back to cavemen, but we'd have definitely reverted backwards a couple of thousand years. And you just got to wonder what was going on. Because, I was watching this thing about Rome earlier today, and I always wondered why Rome just didn't go ahead and conquer the whole world.
Mm-hmm.
After 500 years, they had pretty much conquered the civilized world. So they just should have spent the next 500 years conquering the rest of the world. We'd be a united world today. We'd all be Romans, mind you, but we'd be united. I could deal with being Romans. They cook good. Had a good culture, a very interesting culture. But today, it's not like that. Today, it's we're divided, multiplied, and I wonder sometimes if it's not designed to keep humans out of space, keeping us broke up like this. Yes, it makes the Chinese and the Russians and Americans and French and Germans compete in space. But if you put all those countries together and just had one space program, we'd already be far out of our solar system. We'd be mining asteroid belts. We have colonies all over the place, just because of sheer money and brain power. But we don't. We keep
Mm-hmm.
ourselves divided, and we're always fighting amongst ourselves, and it makes it hard. And all that money we spend, just think, people, just if you took all the money spent on military worldwide, I think it's $3 trillion or $4 trillion a year, and you put that back into science, colonization, and medicine, I guarantee everything on the planet would be cured, and we'd be all over the solar system. But we're not.
Mm-hmm.
And then, given the simple fact, and they've done a lot of studies on this, the mid ages, they say the Middle Ages set us back 1,000 years. The burning of the Library of Alexandria set us back 1,000 years.
At
Uh,
least.
because there was all kind of technology lost here. Remember,
Mm-hmm.
we found out that they were doing electroplating 6,000 years ago. Who the hell? I mean, it's electricity. You know what electroplating is, people? That's when you put gold on something. So somebody figured out you could take a jar, put two rods in there, and fill it with like orange juice or something acidic, and it would create electricity. And they could use that electricity to paint gold electroplate. Really? So Benjamin Franklin invented electricity. Some guy 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago invented electricity. We don't even know who the hell it was. And just to think, if we would have been a united planet then, that would have went all the way around the world. Somebody would have learned how to use power. And then there's the thing with the Egyptians that suggests that Egyptians had electricity 5,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If you look at some of the hieroglyphs, they show these tubes, and obviously they're clear. They're usually about yay long. Well, you can't see me on camera, so they're about yay long anyway. It's about 3 foot long, and they were big on one end and small on the other, just like a light bulb is. And inside they had an electric eel. That's what it showed, and it was connected to a cable, and the thing would start to glow. So they just portrayed it as an electric eel because they didn't understand what the filament was. But somebody back then was lighting cakes because no one could understand how they lit these pyramids and stuff. Fire wouldn't have done it because if the smoke would have caused carbon, it would either killed you or it would scar up all the walls. There is no fire marks inside any of these caves. They didn't use fire, and the further you went in, the less light there was. So how the hell they light their way in these big underground cities and these pyramids and stuff? And that's the only thing that you can find in hieroglyphs that showed how they light them. These long tubes that had wires on them. You could see they were connected to cords that were connected to other ones. They glowed. Sounds like a light bulb to me.
And yet, you look at the ancients who had so much of this technology. You can look at all of this cave art, as they call it, going back thousands of years. And yet our governments of the world say, no, we can't say for sure that there's aliens. I don't know. Some of it is pretty darn compelling that it's out of there. The technology is pretty darn compelling. That microchip right there speaks volumes.
Yes. And then you've got India and China both who talk about these things. They talk about culture 6,000 years before they even existed.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to wonder what the hell is going on. China's talking about, China is 6,000 years old. India is 6,000 years by normal standards. So now we know India is actually older. We know it's at least 12,500 years old. Probably China is too. Both of them have found cities that nobody wants to talk about. And then we've got the city off the coast of Cuba that's supposed to be 55,000 years old. What the hell?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody, these things have, and the pyramid.
They're saying, Joe, that might be Atlantis. And everything that you're saying where they thought Atlantis was with the Bimini Wall, it seems that it's very possible that they're now saying the city near south of Cuba may be that place.
Well, the pyramid they said every pyramid in Egypt could fit inside with space left over.
There you go.
So
what are your thoughts on that?
And then nobody knows how it's sunk into 2,000 feet of water because it's actually in Cuba's harbor, in case y'all didn't know this. It's actually in the harbor of Cuba. It's in a deep, nobody knows what the hell this was. It does look like there was advanced cultures on here way before. And now they're starting to find relics all along the Gulf Coast. Stuff has started washing up. They're finding stuff in the Gulf. And the Gulf's an interesting place because it's very clear, it's very clean, and it's very deep. So in a lot of places, it has a sandy bottom with no vegetation. So anything that went in there would have sunk down in there and been covered over the years. So oil companies have found stuff while they were dredging and digging. Nobody wants to talk about it. And then I had a good friend of mine who I call him the Yellow Submarine guy. He's a deep sea guy, and I met him. He come to the room one day. He heard me talking about diving and stuff like that, and he was telling me what he did. He takes his Yellow Submarine down. He goes and does all this stuff, and he said it's interesting that we keep finding stuff and nobody wants to talk about it. He said, well, he was one of the original divers. So in case you didn't know this, ladies and gentlemen, America had nothing to do with this. This was a Canadian-Cuban venture that found this. And they both had dive teams set up, and they dived for 2 years. And then there was actually pictures all over the internet. And then all of a sudden, they were gone. No one would talk about it. I called him up and said, hey, what's going on, man? He said, they told me if I talked about it, I'd be put in prison, in a Cuban prison at that. He said, I called my friends in Canada because he was working out of some island down there. He said, I called my friends in Canada. They said, no, the job's over. Don't worry about it. It's now classified. You can't talk about it anymore. Bam. If you do, you're going to prison. And so him and I talked about it for a long time, but we never talked about it on air because they did say he would go to prison. And I don't want to get him in trouble because I knew if I started talking about it on air, they would instantly look at him and say, hey, this is who Joe's been on the phone with. That's where the information's coming from. Go do something about it. And it was great. I still got pictures somewhere. I got it on one of my profiles somewhere. I managed to keep 2 or 3 pictures, but in the end, you can only find the original 3 satellite pictures. They actually had underwater pictures of these pyramids and stuff. There was 3 of them there, and they were set up the way the ones in Egypt were, but they were much more massive. They were just massive. He said the whole area it took the whole bottom of the ocean down there. He said it was a massive city. He said, Joe, I'm telling you, he said something catastrophic happened. He said because there was still like cups and stuff in the places. You could see where people had been cooking. He said he just said, and he agreed with me. He thought it was Atlantis too, but nobody was going to talk about it. And then there's Bimini Road out there. They tried to say it was natural rock. Get out of here. Look, people, I've been around a lot of rock, and I'm a contractor, okay? Natural rock does not come out in perfect rectangles. It just does not. It's like the one they found off the coast of Japan. He said, oh, it's just a shale away. It cuts down. It's always squared perfect. So I said, okay, then why does it get that big altar stone down there? I said, that big round stone with the little signals in the middle of it. I said, that wouldn't have happened naturally. And
No.
nobody wants to talk about that because you can't explain it. The other stuff they just called rock shearing, which was also bullshit. And then there's other things out there that they found in the Pacific, in the Atlantic, they don't want to talk about. And then there's supposedly stuff found in the damn triangle they don't want to talk about. From what I understand, Atlantis was supposed to Cuba was part of it. There was a much bigger island and it stretched way out to almost halfway. If they were right, this island stretched from, it touched the mainland in the United States or in South America, and it almost touched the mainland in the Middle East. And it would make sense if it sunk, that some people managed to get over to the Middle East and survive, and some got to South America. That's why we have the pyramids so close together. And the only reason they're different in construction is they didn't have the type of rock in South America to cut these big slabs like they did where they were in Egypt. So they couldn't have done it. So, and down in South America, they built them in sections and with like chains and nets and stuff. And in South America, in the Middle East, they used just cut slabs. Can't find none of that. Nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to talk about the similarities in the two cultures. They don't talk about any of that stuff. And it also would make the Toltecs much older than we originally thought. We're only telling people that the Toltecs are only about 3,500 years old. But if the story of Atlantis is true, that means the Toltecs are as old as the Egyptians. And since there is no real information on the Toltecs, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, other than the fact that we know Chihuahuas came from there, there is none. There's no dating. There's no nothing. We knew they built great vast cities, and we know the Aztecs, the Mayans, and the Incans copied them. But no one knows anything about the Toltecs. There's just hardly any information about them. It's like they just disappeared off the planet, like someone come and took them. So these were races that were moving along, that somebody in the advanced races came in and were helping them, and maybe they decided, oh wait, y'all getting too advanced. I don't know, but there's enough information that there should have been a major thing launched into this, but for some reason we're scared to look at it. We don't want to talk about it.
That's just
Well, Joseph, one of the reasons people built the pyramids, people don't realize it. But pyramids is one of the easiest way to build a high thing. Stack, 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 stack. I tell you what I found interesting was the Roman domes. Those were complicated. And they started at the bottom with thicker concrete, then it got lighter, 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 and at the very top they used the ash mix. Do you know, today, we cannot repeat Roman concrete. It's much stronger than any concrete made on the planet. They discovered how to make concrete underwater, 3,000 years before we did, and it's a better concrete than we use. And we still cannot figure out the mix. So the Romans actually had a better mix of concrete than we can in the 21st century than we have. Figure that one out. There are things that suggest there was interference in different places. And it might not have been intentional interference. It might have just been stray people who were left behind that were trying to just live, that their home world was destroyed, Atlantis sunk, and these were just people that were part of the catastrophe. They no longer had the access to their technology, so they couldn't build things with that. So they had to use their mind and go with the old school stuff that they could. And it would make sense that they were distributed around the planet after it sunk. Anybody who had a boat or a plane or whatever they were using to travel with would have been, to the next island or to the next continent or whatever it was. But that's another thing we don't want to talk about. We don't want to talk about the Egyptians and the Toltecs being so close together. We don't want to talk about that. There's only that little piece of the Atlantic Ocean that separates them. If there was an island in between them, it would have been no big deal. When the island sunk, someone went left, someone went right, someone went down. We don't want to talk about that. We just want to talk about things that, we want to talk about stupid shit these days. I don't even want to talk about what the media talks about today because it's nothing of any consequence. It's like when I was a kid growing up, the media was like, yeah, let's get into this. Let's get into that. Let's go look at this. Let's look at that. Not today. We don't want to talk about that. And even if you can get history and discovery to talk about it, that's always lighthearted. It's never really intense information. That just pisses me off. We sunk in Atlantis.
We're probably out of time, so we'll probably have to wait till next week for that. But that's okay. That's just more for next week. Don't show it all. Don't show it all.
But this is cool. On the ICAR website, you'll find something that looks really close to this. No, not on the ICAR website. On the Alien.
I may as well say what it is now. Then it's an event that happened. Yeah. It happened in London, England, December 11th, 2020. These images were allegedly analyzed by investigators who could, of course, only see the authenticity of the video, but it was taken by a citizen who witnessed it on that evening. It was apparently a pretty considerable size. So that's where we'll stop. Everything else will go to next week.
That's Joe's private aircraft. Y'all leave it alone. I told y'all before, if y'all start looking at my aircraft, I'm going to have to zap you with a laser, and I'll stop it. Michelle is right. We are out of time. Now, I'm going to do something that I don't normally do. I'm going to make this video, this gray zone available. It's the only one you're going to get. Listen, it's the only one you're going to get. All the rest of them are non-available. You're not going to get them until we decide to put them back on YouTube. And this is it. So, because I had some people crying on me last week because I have made the other ones available. So I'm going to make only this episode available. So let's just say it's a teaser, and it's a really good teaser at that. But that's all y'all going to get. The rest of them are still good.
His drugs must really be good. Jesus.
Yeah, I wish they were better. Actually, Joseph, I heard about that. I actually did. But anyway, I know we got to get out of here. But so I will put this up, and I will let people on Facebook and all know that it is available. We had a nice, good audience tonight, well over 2 million. So I'm glad to see that. And a lot of people, a lot of the other people who like watch us on Facebook or watch us on hear that or the other damn thing. They're like, Joe, please, I can't fight you. I can't fight you. Hey, I'm sorry. YouTube is a bitch. What can I tell y'all? I can't even resubmit our station to YouTube until the 10th. And then I can resubmit to monetize it, and then I will make it available. I was going to put it up on Podbean, but Podbean is already bitching at me about space. So we run through Podbean space in a matter of days. It used to be all month, now 15 days. We're out of space. So we produce a lot of material, and these shows are particular. Michelle and I put in a lot of work. Actually, Michelle does all the hard work. All I do is yap. Peter, before we go, no, seriously, she does all the hard work. Oh no, I just yap. She makes me look good. I say that every week. Matter of fact, we were talking about you last night because we were talking about Stephanie Bonetti last night, and I was talking because we were talking about how good of a researcher she was and blah 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 blah. And your name came up, and I said, "Oh yeah, that's Michelle." I said, "Michelle's just a good or better researcher, and I don't have to get screamed at every day." I said, "It's much more peaceful.
I'm more easygoing."
Yeah, well, it'll be available on YouTube. It'll be available everywhere that we make them available. Usually, it's a mad dash for Michelle and I to get them down because people get stupid with them. Because I'm not kidding you. Within 15 minutes, we always have them down. Sometimes you'll see 100, 150 people have already looked at them before we get them down. But the bad part is, right while they're watching them, it goes click and goodbye.
Oh no! People get a little bit up.
But we do this because it was helping fund in Michelle's show, which they don't have to worry about now because they got fully funded through Folgers now, which so means it's money for her and for me once we get these back up and running an archive. But it helps the station stay afloat. It keeps it from getting out of my pocket. Keeps me from getting divorced because I'm spending too much money on the radio station.
It helps my 25 hours a week.
Yes, and Michelle does a lot of work. She does. Y'all think that, if somebody asked me that day, she said, well, what did you do? She's like, 15. I said, it's 15 minutes. I said, what kind of crack are you on? I said, it takes her 15 minutes just to find the pictures. I said, that's a couple of hours. And I said, then she's got to go back through her data. And I said, I know she's anal like I am. I said, so she goes through it, and then she looks at it again. Then she goes back and looks again.
It's true. And it's a lot of reading and research. You have to format the show. You can't just throw a bunch of stupid stuff. It's got to format it,
No,
There's lots of information.
Amelia and her are on Wednesday and Thursday. Amelia's not on this show. No. Amelia said she's scared to talk about these things with us. She's scared the aliens might get her. Which they might if you talk about this too much. But there's going to be a promo coming out here in just a few minutes, and y'all can listen to that while we get ready to get out of here. I do want to tell everyone I thank you for tuning into the Gray Zone and United Public Radio. I hope y'all enjoyed the show. I did notice I got to hear Weird Tales before us today. It was a good show. Yeah, it's a good show. Matter of fact, I was on his show. I don't know when he's going to make it public, but eventually the show I did with him will be out. Charles Christian, it's actually his birthday today. So I'll go wish him a happy birthday. He's our UK host. Yes, and we got a South American host now. And we're going to bring on probably JJ Ryder as soon as we can figure out a time thing. He's in South Korea. So it makes it a little complicated. But yes, we do have hosts. And then we got 7 hosts in Canada. So, it's funny. Before I go, somebody asked me about this. Like, well, you know an awful lot about what's going on in Canada. I was like, yeah. I said, I got 7 hosts up there. And I said, they're always telling me something. Well, how did you know they locked in? Oh, because that what it was. It says, well, how do you know what's going on with their lockdown? I said, because my hosts tell me. Really? I'm like, yeah. I said, are you not listening to the whole network? I said, if you were listening to the whole network, you didn't know who they were. And then I got screamed at again because I call them my host. They are my host. I'm going to tell you again, they're my host. Yes, I own your asses. Yes, I signed a deal with
What?
Satan. I
Okay.
signed a deal with Satan
I
to
want a
bring them on.
freaking raise.
I want
Okay.
to raise.
I want freaking, yeah, man. I want benefits. And I want,
Oh shit! No,
yeah.
I'm serious. That when we say that, we mean for the station. That's what we're always talking about. And I know people give you shit about it all the time. No, I'm serious. I'm serious. But we got to go. So listen to this archive coming up next. I mean, not the archive. Listen to this promo coming up next, and you'll see what's going on. Pay attention to it because all I can say is vote, 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 vote. And if you know somebody that's over at at People's Choice, tell them to vote, 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 vote. Well, they're only going to let X amount of people in. They only do 50,000 votes, so we have to get nominated again. So you get nominated to get on, and then it's 50,000 votes. They pick who gets nominated, and then they go into the final, which is last 5,000 votes, and that determines who's going to win. Yes, it's going to be for me. It's going to be like Preston Dennett with Right into the Future. He had to go 47 times before he won. It'll probably be like that for me too. But Michelle and them are over there. Be sure to go vote for them. Chasing Prophecies over there. United Public Radio. Right into the Future's over there, which they got a good chance of winning this year. And of course, the Centrals and Science and Is Born is on over there. So be sure to go check them out and vote. Y'all all know all these shows on the network already because I know most of y'all are listening to them. Again, I'm going to kick this on and we will see y'all. I'll see you Monday. And I don't know what after that. Let's see. Oh, and happy 4th of July. Happy late Canadian Day and happy early 4th of July.
Happy 4th.
Yeah,
Independence Day.
Yes, when we thought we got independence and we got something else. Yeah, I know. So here y'all go for this archive.
Y'all behave yourselves. We'll see you next.
All right, everybody, it's time for you to get out and nominate for your favorite podcast. There are 4 amazing shows I want you to consider for the People's Choice Podcast Awards, the longest-running premier awards event in the podcasting space, open to shows worldwide. You can vote at podcastawards.com and nominate the following shows. Writers and Illustrators of the Future podcast in the categories of education and storyteller drama. This show is based on the world-famous Writers of the Future contest created in 1983 by L. Ron Hubbard and provides writing tips and art advice from contest judges, winners, and industry professionals for writers and artists wanting to take their next step, along with the needed inspiration to keep on going. Next one, The Centralist in the category of politics and news. The Centralist is a much different news and political program. It is not opinion news, it's just the facts so you, the people, can make up your own minds on the different stories reported on. Listen as Joe Montaldo brings to you just the facts from trusted sources. Science and Beyond in the category of science and medicine. Science and Beyond is a true science-based program that explores every aspect of science, from how things work to why we need science. And where science can't explain something, we go beyond to see if we can figure it out on our own how something works. The Outer Realm in the category of society culture. The Outer Realm is a very popular show hosted by Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano, with guests who are well-versed within their respective fields of ufology, paranormal, cryptozoology, and anything else that would be deemed otherworldly. Nothing is off limits in the Outer Realm. Michelle is an international public figure and has spent the last 18 years working in the paranormal. Her co-host Amelia is a remote viewing medium with 9 years experience working in missing children and cold and active murder cases. So go to podcastawards.com to vote for these 4 shows and any others you enjoy listening to. That's podcastawards.com.